what I want you guys to be thinking about, and take some time, and even if you just jot it down on a piece of paper, uh, some questions, some things that you maybe they just kind of sit back there in the back of your head, and you're like, I really wonder what I wonder about that. Pastor Michelle alluded to it over there before we split up. Um, Thoughts, things that maybe something that you read that it's not quite clicking, it's not quite fully making sense, a passage or something like that. Um, because it's not just about what I can come up with, it's about what we can work on together. And I want to make sure that we have uh, more opportunities to talk about stuff like that than just me coming up with something. Um, but for right now, I want to finish out what we've been talking on. For those of you that haven't been here, we started attacking probably October maybe last year. We started talking about what does it mean to be a man after God's own heart. You know, God was very specific, and this is the only person he ever said it about was David. He said, I found David, my servant, a man who is after my own heart. And for God to give you that kind of a stamp of approval, that's a big deal. Like I said, he didn't say that about anybody else. He called Abraham his friend. That's a big deal. But he said that David was a man after his own heart. That meant that David had a relationship with him that on a level that nobody else had. You know, you had priests, and you had prophets and things like that, but you never see God say, well, I found Samuel, a man after my own heart. Or I found Elijah, a prophet after my own heart. But you have God saying that about David. This is a man after my own heart. So we've been taking a look at David, and what are things that David learned and exhibited that helped make him a man after God's own heart. And I don't want to go through everything in super detail, but I want to catch us up a little bit, because there are several things that that go into making a man after God's own heart. And going from the very beginning, when you first hear about David, he's young. He's the youngest son of 8. And he's the one that gets all the grunt jobs. You know, his father sends him out in the middle of nowhere to watch over dumb, smelly sheep. But he does it with a good attitude. And that's one of the first things about being a man after God's own heart. And is that a godly man, I'll break out my smart guy glasses here. A godly man is quick to obey even when it's not glamorous or fun, and even when no one else is watching. David was literally stuck out in the backside of nowhere. And we see that later on when Samuel comes to the house and he says, you know, I'm here. One of your sons is supposed to be the next king. And so Jesse lines all the sons up, and he goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and God's like, that's not it. That's not it. He's 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 not it. And finally Samuel looks at Jesse and he goes, you got anybody else? And Jesse has to think for a minute. He's like, oh yeah, there's one. He's out in the back 40 taking care of the sheep. His own dad forgot he was out there. But here's David out there doing, like I said, he's a nobody in the middle of nowhere doing a nothing grunt job, but he's doing it with a good attitude. So a godly man is quick to obey even when it's not glamorous or fun, and even when nobody else is watching. And this is where David begins his relationship with God, because he's out there in the middle of nowhere, like I said, but he's beginning to talk to God like he's his friend. He's learning to play. He's becoming skillful on the harp. He's like, well, what else am I going to do? But as he begins to do that, he's developing this communication with God that, like I said, you don't see anywhere else in the Old Testament. You don't see a Samuel. You don't see an Elijah or an Elisha. You don't see them just wanting to hang out with God. But David's developing that. He's out here in the back, not being seen by anybody, but he's developing that relationship. And that relationship is going to serve him farther on. The second point coming through here with that is that a godly man develops his own relationship with God and cultivates it, which gives him power when he needs it. So David's out there, he's taking care of the sheep. Saul is in a bad way because he screwed up, and this is something we'll get to later on, probably not in this session, probably in the last session, the next time. But Saul screwed up, and when he was confronted with his screw up, he started making excuses.
Trying to blame it on everybody else.
Exactly. Tried to blame it on the very people he was supposed to be taking care of. Here he is, the king, and they were supposed to utterly wipe out and destroy this particular people group because they were so toxic and so perverted that they were literally destroying the area. And that sticks in a lot of people's heads. Like, well, if God is love, how could he not do anything with those people? They had gotten themselves to a point where there was not a single one of them that wanted to do the right thing. And they were starting to contaminate the other peoples around them, including the Israelites. So God said to Saul, I want you to go in. We're taking them out. Not one thing left. Not even their animals left. And I could go into some gross details as to why, but not even their animals left. These people were so far out there and so perverted that everything had to go. Livestock had to go. People had to go. Well, Saul gets there. They take a bunch of the people out, but they don't take everybody out. And they don't take the animals out. Because he decided that, hey, that cow looks pretty good. Why do I want to just slaughter that cow when I can take it home and I can have steak? So he has all of these things over here, these animals and things over. And Samuel comes up and he says to him, why am I hearing farm animals right now? I should be hearing dead silence. There should not be anything alive. And instead, when he's called on the carpet, instead of going, you know what, that's on me, I messed up, he starts going, well, you know, the people wanted to hold on to these things. The people wanted to use them for sacrifices. And who am I to go against the people? And it cost him his anointing. It cost him his position as king. Samuel said, God can't use you anymore. Well, then he starts getting an attitude, and he grabs for Samuel and ends up tearing his robe. And he says, just like you've torn my robe, God's torn the kingdom away from you, and he's given it to another. Well, he doesn't know it, but that other is David. But what happens is, now he's being tormented. Saul's being tormented all the time, and he's looking for some sort of relief. And one of his servants goes, hey, I know a guy. Now remember, David's on the backside of nowhere watching sheep, but his reputation is preceding him because he's developing his own relationship with God. And this servant goes, King, I know a guy. And this guy's really, really good. He's a slamming musician. And when he plays, you're going to feel better. So Saul goes, okay, find me this dude. So now, even though David can't tell anybody that he's anointed to be king, now Saul's brought him in, and so he's playing for Saul to try and soothe his mind when he's being so tormented. And so God is even now beginning to bring him into position. He wouldn't have been able to do that if David hadn't taken his time out as a nobody in the middle of nowhere, developing his relationship, developing his worship life. And then, of course, we know the big story, David and Goliath. He would not have been able to do what he did to Goliath if he had not had those other things in place. So that man after God's own heart, he's obedient. He's doing the jobs that aren't glamorous because they need to be done because he's asked to do them. And while he's doing that, he's developing his relationship, his own personal relationship with God. And that personal relationship, now he's getting to a point where here's this monstrosity of a guy, Goliath, who's defying the armies of God. And because David's built this relationship, he looks at him and he's like, who is this fool? Who is this fool? That he would dare say these things about my God and my people and my covenant. And because of the way he's living his life, now it gives him the power to step up and do what needs to be done, which is take out Goliath. And so that brings us up to another point. Now Saul's happy, but he's jealous. And in spite of everything, in spite of all these victories, in spite of everything that God did through David, now Saul is openly trying to murder him. He's openly sending assassins. And we talked about this. Half a dozen different times, he sends guys out to find David and take him out. But this is point number 3. David does not return the offense with anything but honor and reverence. He refuses to fight back against God's anointed king. And what you do when you're wrongfully accused, what you do when somebody comes after you for no reason at all, goes to your character. And that goes to you being a man after God's own heart. It's not fun. I think we could probably all come up with times in our lives when maybe we've been accused of something that we didn't do, or accused of not doing something that we most certainly did and made sure it was done and done right. Maybe at work, maybe somebody said, well, hey, Simon didn't take the trash out, but Simon most certainly took the trash out. But the supervisor says, dude, I really need you to pay better attention. I need you to take the trash out. And you're like, all the time in the back of your head, you're like, you dumb schmuck, I took the trash out 20 minutes ago. But that's not what you say. You're like, yeah, absolutely. I will make sure from here on out that it's done. How you handle that speaks to your character. And character, really, that's another way of saying a man after God's own heart. We're talking about being a man of character. A man that does what needs to be done because it needs to be done, not because it's glamorous, not because it gets you noticed, but you do it because it needs to be done. You're developing your own relationship with God. And even when somebody falsely accuses you, you're taking it in stride and you're making the situation right, even though it's not your fault. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Has anybody here ever had that happen? At work, somebody said, hey, you didn't do something, or hey, you did something. Or a teacher said, hey, you didn't do this or that. Has anybody ever experienced that? Mm-hmm. You have? With a teacher. What happened?
I don't remember about it.
Right. But the character says, okay, we'll take care of it. We'll make it different. We'll make it right. And when you do that, then it does not give the enemy any place to stand, because you're literally disarming his argument. So even though David was completely in the right, even though he's actually helping Saul, he still doesn't return those attacks with anything other than honor. And then we come to another one. David's on the run, but he comes up on a town that's being raided. It's being, there are groups of people that are coming into town. It's kind of like, has anybody ever seen any of those old westerns like The Magnificent Seven or anything like that, where there's this peaceful little town and there's these basically that amount to cowboy thugs, and they're going in and shooting up the place and taking their grain and taking their stuff.
Yeah.
And these other people come in, it's not their town, but they're not going to stand there and let somebody else be taken advantage of. Well, there was a town like that.
Oh,
And it was the village of Keilah. And David's on the run. He's actively trying to stay one step ahead of Saul's assassins. But he and his men come up on this town, and this town is being regularly raided. And they're like, we can't sit still for this. And that's another mark of a man after God's own heart. And that's somebody that, go
I
ahead.
remember what the teacher did.
Oh,
She lost her
okay.
papers.
He lost your paper.
No, she lost. her
She
papers.
lost your paper, but she blamed you for not turning it
Yeah,
in.
she lost 3 of them.
Well, there you go. There you go. So this town of Keilah, so what a man of God did here, in spite of putting himself at risk by staying put, he exposed himself to defend and save somebody else who couldn't defend themselves. And that's another mark of a man after God's own heart, is somebody who's willing to stand up for other people that can't stand up for themselves. Not saying you run around picking fights, but when you see somebody being abused or somebody being taken advantage of, and you step in, you're like, no, this isn't going to fly. This isn't going to fly. I want to jump ahead. Carrying the story on farther. And you can read all this in 1st and 2nd Samuel. The books 1st and 2nd Samuel. They read like an action novel. They're not the slightest bit boring. But in 2nd Samuel, Saul finally gets his just desserts and he dies in battle. But this is the point, and we'll see how this takes place. How gracefully and how noble you are in victory is every bit as important as how you handle a setback or a defeat. So David's been being chased all this time. Now the very person who was chasing him, who was trying to have him murdered, he's finally taken out. David doesn't hold a party. David doesn't run around. David doesn't go after Saul's family in retribution. He actually has a memorial ceremony for Saul. He behaves with grace. He behaves with dignity. He behaves nobly. Even though this is his enemy, he stops and he tells everybody, okay, we're going to the place where he died, and we're going to have a memorial service. And we're going to treat him with the respect that a king deserves. And the takeaway there is, when you finally have victory, the way you respond, the way you react, you're not in somebody's face, I took you down. No, you're behaving. You're the guy that comes up after the game and goes, good game. You're the guy that comes up, good job. It's a pleasure playing against you, or whatever it happens to be. The way you handle victory is just as important as the way you handle a setback. David had all kinds of setbacks. I skipped for the sake of time, I skipped one of the most important ones where he got his whole camp raided. His wives got taken, his kids got taken, all of his guys, their wives, their children, all of their stuff got taken by these raiders. And they literally, the scripture says they sat down and they cried until they had no tears left to cry. And the guys that were with him thought, you know what? This is your fault. And they wanted to stone him. They wanted to kill him. And so he goes back to the one thing he knows. Says he encouraged himself in the Lord. He goes back to his relationship with God. And then God says, all right, you cried long enough. Now take your men, go kick butt, and get back everything. Because you will find them, you will get them, and you will get everything back. So now he goes, now he's got something to work with. All the guys that were wanting to take him out, he's like, okay, I have it. I've talked to God. We have a plan. We're going to go take him, and we're going to go take everything back. So then they all go. They do it goes exactly the way God says it's going to go. Nobody, not one man, lost a wife or a child or a sheep or a goat or a cat, anything. They got everything back. Plus they got back everything that the guys that raided them, because they took them out. So during that tremendous setback, he didn't pout. He didn't fight his guys. He didn't blame his guys. He went back to his relationship with God. And then when he won, when he finally won and Saul is finally dead and out of the way, instead of throwing a party, instead of gloating, he says, no, we're going to go and we're going to have a memorial service, because he was still king. And we're going to treat him with the respect that the office, not necessarily the man, but the respect that the office deserves. And that goes to making him a man after God's own heart. So we see these things. Now, take that and look at it in your day-to-day life. What's a situation where you could gloat, you could throw a party, you could get in somebody's face, but instead you handle it like a professional. You handle it like a man after God's own heart. What's a situation where you could see that happen? It's okay to talk. You do know that, right? What about if let's take your scenario, Darcy. What would happen if all of a sudden that teacher found the papers that she lost, that she accused you of not turning in? How would a man of God handle that?
I would have said thank you, if she did find it.
Okay. So how would a man of God have handled that as opposed to somebody that wasn't a man of God? Would a man would instead of getting in her face and saying, I told you I turned it in. I told you, why were you being so stupid? Even though, according to the world, you're within your rights to be like that because you were falsely accused. But a man of God says, thank you, I'm so glad you were able to find it.
I just said thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted the other.
Exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to be showing, but it's the way you handle it. There's
Then
one,
after I redid all the papers.
but you did what was required. See, and that's a man after God's own heart. Because you could have fought it, you could have pitched a gigantic fit. You could have figured out a way to prove that you turned stuff in and she lost it to make her look bad, but you didn't. See, David, if you think about it, David could have gone city by city and told everybody what Saul was doing to him. He could have gone around, he didn't have social media, but he could have sent people out, witnesses going, David's done nothing wrong, and Saul is chasing him with armies and assassins and all, and could have really tried to make his case. But he didn't do that. He just stayed one step ahead of him. And then finally, he finally gets it. And instead of going, fine, great, the guy was a jerk, he was a horse's butt, and he got everything he deserved. I'm glad he's gone. He didn't do that.
So let's one up there real quick. Let's take it to a competitive side. Benji, run cross country. Say you and a competitor are running, and the finish line is 300 feet away, and you guys are just at dead sprint. And it's you and one person, and he trips you up right before the finish line. How does a man of God handle that situation in a competitive atmosphere
I would be mad for those.
when it's staked on the line?
I would be mad for those 40 seconds place planting into the ground, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's just a race, and you need to show compassion because you don't know the side of him tripping you. He could have done it on accident, so ultimately you can't Even if he did, at the end of the day, it's not a great example to show like hurting him or being mean. It doesn't just hurt you or your relationship with God, it just hurts Lincoln, Christian's character of what we built over the last 15 years or so on, and it hurts my team. So it doesn't show great character, not
Right.
just for
Because
me.
you're
Even-
representing.
Yeah, even though you technically you'd be
Technically,
right.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
be mad, but
Yeah,
It's what you represent outside of it. I mean, now like Braden, say you're at bat and the pitcher hits you. But then you go up to bat again, you get hit again by the same pitcher. Now, how would a man of God handle that? Because over and over the course, you would want to charge the mound. How would a man of God
he's like, no.
handle the situation?
Just take it back.
You what?
Just take it back. Take it back.
Yeah,
'Cause, I mean, because you don't know what that pitcher's going through with the coach yelling at him. I mean, you've been there before, where you've hit people. So, because you're a pitcher, so when you've got the coach yelling at you and the atmosphere trying to zone it in on your box makes it a little bit more difficult, especially with the stress and the game on the line. So, positioning it on a competitive level takes it a little different aspect compared to like a teacher not turning in your paper. This kind of like to see a different angle of a competitive side, because everybody's competitive.
yeah.
So, I mean, we were born to be competitive. So,
Yep, that's exactly right. That's good. That's good. Who all in here plays sports? Of
Golf
some
count?
type?
yes,
sport?
lots of sports.
Soccer? Okay.
Soccer?
Soccer? Sports? Okay.
Golf.
Golf? Basketball?
Are you the only one that plays sports back there?
volleyball,
You
What do you
do? What do you play?
sand.
All right, all right.
Uh,
So super competitive then.
What about you, Isaiah? What do you play? Nothing? Braden, you play baseball and football.
Yeah.
Benji,
What?
Track and cross country?
Yeah,
that's it? You just run?
pretty much.
Forever.
Hmm?
You guys don't play sports. One of these days you'll be competitive. Really.
They make up for it by working their
They
butts
fish,
off.
that's a sport.
You what? Fishing? Fishing is a sport.
Catch the line.
But there's always gonna be an opportunity, huh? Yeah. There's always gonna be an opportunity to make the choice between reacting the right way and reacting the wrong way.
You guys are right.
There's always gonna be, whether it's at work, whether it's at school, whether it's on the field, whether it's, just at the mall, just, somebody does something stupid at the mall.
I mean, speaking of the mall, I mean, look at it this way, because the day and age we're in now, who all here games? Who's a gamer who plays video games? Because they have competitive championships, whether it's like Madden or any type of game they have is competitive. So
They have that at my school too.
yeah, so imagine yourself being in the finals, playing, whatever game it is you're playing, and you get beat. But you get beat badly, like you get embarrassed by your competitor. And this is the first time that competitors even played that game, and you play this all day, every day, day and night, you don't even sleep, and you just get humiliated. How would you handle that situation as a man of God?
I should say new game. That's what I do every day. Because I don't really play games. I play games, but I don't play those games.
Especially with social media too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another one.
Yeah.
That happens easy.
Because everybody hides behind the keyboard.
Somebody flames you online, somebody says something that isn't true, isn't right.
But then everybody believes the other guy.
We can all be Davids behind the keyboard, which is a warrior behind the keyboard. That's the terminology this day. Is everybody's a keyboard warrior. Slinging the terminology. The next thing you know, it's a grandma behind the keyboard talking smack.
Right, right.
Little kid.
There's one other aspect that I want to hit tonight. and that is a man after God's own heart keeps his word. Keeps his word. You remember when we were first talking about David, you know, he developed a friendship with Saul's son Jonathan.
Oh yeah.
And they were to the point where they made a covenant with each other. And a covenant isn't just, hey, I'm your bud. A covenant, especially back then, you traded all kinds of things. David would have traded him, given him his sling or his shepherd's staff, and Jonathan would have given him his belt that had his sword on it. David would have given him his shepherd's coat, and Jonathan would have given him his overcoat that showed that he was the king's son. And whenever a covenant is made, it is the strongest bond that you can make. It is actually stronger than the bond of family. When you make a covenant with somebody, in fact, one of the things that you say in the process of making the covenant is, and this is actually where communion comes from. Jesus was talking about this when he handed the bread out and he said, "This is my body," and then he handed the cup and he said, "This is the new covenant in my blood." When they would make a covenant, they would sit down and have a meal. Now, the Israelites didn't do blood, but other cultures actually did drink blood. But what they would do is they would have wine and they would have bread. And if I was making a covenant with Simon, I would tear off a piece of bread and I would hand it to Simon and I would say, "This is my body." Meaning, whatever you need from me, if you need my hand, if you need my foot, if you need my muscle, whatever you need from me, this is my body. And you would do the same thing. You'd tear off a piece of bread and you'd hand it to me and you'd say, "This is my body," saying whatever I need from you. Whether I need a couch moved at 2:00 in the morning or whether somebody's breaking into my house, we're in covenant. And then I would take this glass of wine and I would say, "This is my blood," meaning that what you need outweighs what I need. So if you need something and I have it, it's yours. Even if it means maybe you need food. I go and I raid my pantry, I raid my fridge, and I bring you food, even if that means I miss a meal. That's what covenant is. So Jonathan and David have made this kind of an unbreakable bond. Why is this important? Keep in mind, Jonathan is Saul's son. So Jonathan's dad is literally trying to assassinate his best friend. But eventually Jonathan dies. But this is something this is where I want to get to with this. So in 2 Samuel chapter 4, starting with verse 4, it says, "Now Jonathan, who was Saul's son, had a son of his own, who was crippled in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news came of the death of his father," and so on and so forth. "And the boy's nurse grabbed him up and tried to run away in fear. And in her haste, she fell, and he broke his ankles and became lame. His name, funny name, his name is Mephibosheth." Okay, now you fast forward to 2 Samuel chapter 9. David is now fully taken the position as king of Israel. And at the very beginning of chapter 9, because one of the other things that happened when you made a covenant, you would take your knife or your sword and you would either cut your palm or cut somewhere on your arm, and that was an everlasting sign. You didn't let that heal. You might take some ashes from the fire and rub that in there, so there was always a scar there. Whether it was in the middle of your palm or on your arm somewhere, there was always a scar there. So keep that in mind. So David's king now, Jonathan's dead. He doesn't know if Jonathan has any descendants or anything. So in verse 1 it says, and David said, is there still anyone left of the house of Saul to whom I may show kindness for Jonathan's sake? So David's king now. He's sitting there, he's making decrees, he's doing things. But one day he's doing something and he looks down and he catches a glimpse of that scar. And all the memories of that covenant start coming back to him. Jonathan's dead, but he's looking at that scar and he's like, surely there's got to be some way for me to keep this covenant alive. So he makes a general question. He says, is there anybody left that I can display this covenant to? And so somebody finally tells him, he asks this other servant, this guy named Ziba, and the king said, is there not still someone left of the house of Saul to whom I may show, and I love the way the Amplified says this, that I may show the unfailing, unsought out, unlimited mercy and kindness of God? And Ziba replies, well, Jonathan does have a son. He's a cripple. And the king said, where is he? I got to know where this guy is. And Ziba says, well, he's hiding out in this podunk town called Lodabar. So David sends a whole group of people after this guy. And you got to know, the whole reason that he was crippled is because his nurse was afraid that David was going to be one of those vindictive types who wipes out all of his predecessors so that there's no other claims to the throne. She didn't know that David and Jonathan were in covenant together. So in fear, she grabs this little toddler, Mephibosheth, tries to run off, trips, falls, the kid falls, breaks both his ankles, and now this kid's a cripple. Now this kid has grown up into a man. Still crippled. King David sent and brought him from this house in Lodabar, and Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, who was the son of Saul, came to David and fell down on his face because he thought he was getting ready to get. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, behold your servant. And David said to him, do not fear, for I will surely show to you the kindness for Jonathan your father's sake. And I will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you will always have dinner with me at my royal table. And the cripple, and they didn't even give him a name there. It just says, and the cripple. And the cripple bowed himself low and said, what is your servant that you would look upon such a dead dog as me? Then the king called Ziba, the guy that told him about Mephibosheth, and said to him, I have given your master's grandson all that belonged to Saul and all that is in his house. And now you, talking to Ziba, now you are going to work for him. So here's this guy that's been hiding out for years thinking he was next on the list, thinking that he was going to get assassinated by the new king, not realizing all this time that he had all this status and favor because David was a man of his word. One day David's talking, he sees something, he sees that mark that reminds him that he has given his word to not just Jonathan, but all of Jonathan's descendants. And so as a man, he didn't have to go looking. Mephibosheth is in hiding. David didn't have to go looking. But because he's a man of his word, he sees that scar and he's like, I've got to find somebody that I can pour this love out on. I've got to find somebody that's somehow related to this guy that I was in covenant with, that I was willing to give my blood for, that I was willing to give my life for, that I was willing to put myself in danger for. And so he finally finds it in Mephibosheth. So now he takes this other guy that was one of his servants and he says, you're going to serve this guy now. You and all your sons, you now officially work for him. You take all that land, you're going to farm it, you're going to raise crops, you're going to raise livestock, but you're raising it on his behalf. He's not going to lift a finger ever. He doesn't have to work anymore. He doesn't have to do anything. He gets to hang out with me. He gets to eat at the king's table. That's covenant. That's covenant. That's being a man of his word. You'll bring in all the produce that your master's heir may have food to eat, but Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, will eat always at my table. And so the basically the last thing I want to leave us with tonight, this is quality number 7, and that is a man after God's own heart keeps his word. He said you're going to do it, you do it. If even if somebody says, well, no, that's okay. You know, I've got so-and-so to work the shift. No, I said I was going to cover it for you. I'll be there at 5:45, or I'll be there at, 10 minutes before clock-in time, or whatever it happens to be. If you give your word, then you keep your word. No, I said I was going to do the dishes for you. I'm going to do the dishes for you. No, that's okay. I can just load the dishwasher. No, I said I was going to wash these for you. I'm going to wash them for you. And you follow through with that, because if you follow through, you don't wait to the big stuff in life to follow through. David followed through when he was a teenager, back, like we said, a nobody in the middle of nowhere doing a nothing job. He followed through with that, because you remember, how many of you have heard the story about David with the lion and David with the bear?
Mm-hmm.
So he could have very easily run off and went, I'm sorry, this was not in my job description. Lion tamer, lion fighter, lion destroyer was not in my job description. But he didn't, because he said, yes, Dad, I will take care of the sheep. Well, taking care of the sheep involved taking out a lion and a bear. And so instead of running off and keeping himself safe, he kept his word. And that set him on a path.
Kept the domain, the animals.
That set him on a path. And so now that he's king and he doesn't have to, he still does it. Even with Jonathan, the man with whom he'd cut the original covenant, dead and gone, David continues to honor and fulfill his word.
So what David's saying, like, you keep commitment, like, but when you follow through right then. You don't put it on the back burner, because then you're opening up a whole other can. You follow through, like, if you're gonna do the dishes, you do the dishes now. You don't do the dishes tomorrow. If you tell somebody you're gonna do something, you do it then. See what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's not,
Exactly.
you do it when you feel like you wanna do it, because then they're just gonna take it over, and then you've ruined that trust that you've built. So there's a lot more to it than just, it's the follow through, but it's a follow through right now,
Right.
not a follow through later. Unless it's like a job deal where there's a time, but it's more of like, you gotta follow through on the commitment, and you do it right now, because that shows that you're building that responsibility. That shows that that it's a reliability, that they're gonna rely on you, knowing that when you say something, your character is now, you've established that character where when you say it, they're gonna be like, he will do it.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And that's how you get promotions. That's how you get raises.
And
That's how you become a starter. That's how you grow in life.
yeah, exactly. And I think we've all done this. I know myself, there's been times where I've said, yeah, I'll do it. And just exactly like what Kyle was talking about. I walked in there to do it, and it's already being done. And now you're backpedaling. You're like, well, I was on my way in to do it. Well, I was gonna do it. Well, I needed it done. I needed it done because I needed those pots and pans clean because I'm getting ready to make dinner. I just tell on myself, Yeah, I'll get those dishes washed up. 10 minutes goes by, 15 minutes goes by. I finally go in there and she's washing the last pan. I'm like, I was gonna do that. Yeah, but I needed it done 15 minutes ago because I gotta put the spaghetti sauce on.
But you want to eat dinner, right?
And now, even though I had good intentions, now I'm standing there going,
It was definitely-
but I was going to. But now the next time that comes up, or maybe there's something else, maybe there's something I really want to do. Well, are you really going to do it? Are you really going to do it? Because, there was that. And that's not to say that everybody holds on to everything, but it builds a pattern. It builds a pattern.
And it goes to show too that if you're doing something and the situation comes up and you're like, yeah, I'll do it, and you drop what you're doing to go do it real quick, doesn't go to say that that person you go do it all of a sudden bounces back to pick up what you were doing to help you to finish. So now you're getting your task done faster because now they're helping you because you helped them do something. So now you've got teamwork building in it because it's building the character, it's building the morale. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. Ultimately, you could almost distill the things that we're talking about down to you put others above yourself. Doing those things to be a help, to be a blessing when they need to be done, because that's when it's a blessing. Just like going back to the dishes, telling them myself, it would have been a blessing if I'd stopped what I was doing right then and there and walked in and did the dishes. Going back after the fact and doing the dishes, they're still being done, but the blessing isn't there. Does that make sense?
Putting others in front of you is a characteristic of a man after God's heart.
Exactly. And you could sum just about all of those, whether it was doing what you're asked to do because it needs to be done, not because it's glamorous or not because it gets you noticed, or developing your relationship with God. All of those different things that we've been talking about through all of these different Bible studies, you could literally pretty much sum it up. In fact, it's kind of funny because there's this dude named Jesus. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Harry's pretty cool.
Yeah. And he kind of summed it up that way. He said, there's no greater love that a man can display except that he would lay his life down for his friends. I mean, that pretty much puts it all right in a nutshell. That's a man after God's own heart, that he puts others first. That he takes other people's needs, even their desires, into consideration. And to the extent that he can be a blessing, he's a blessing. And then when things don't go the way maybe you thought they were going to go, how you handle yourself is displaying being a man of God. There's one more thing we're probably going to talk about, because I don't really think we have time to really delve into it tonight, because it is already 7:30. But the last thing we're going to talk about, what do you do when you screw up? Because let's face it, you're here on this earth, you're breathing oxygen, you have one of these, you have an earth suit, you're gonna screw up. That's not me being mean, that's not me speaking death and destruction over you, that's called being human.
You admit it.
And we're gonna see the difference between how Saul handled screwing up. We talked about that in the beginning. David screws up, and David screws up big time. But again, like I said, because it's already after 7:30, we don't really have time tonight. But probably the last time we get together, we're going to talk about that. And there's a way that a man after God's own heart handles that, and God still calls him that, even after the screw up. So, but I want to reiterate, going forward, because like I said, we're going to talk about that probably in March. But I want you guys to be thinking about stuff and writing down notes and questions, because it's one thing for us to just come up with stuff And I believe, because I spend time with God, I believe that we get messages and we get things that God wants to talk to us about and wants to bring to us. But in an environment like this, we want it to be something where it's like, hey, what about, or hey, I was reading the other day and this didn't make sense, or just anything like that. This is a good place to go over things like that, because I will bet you large amounts of money that you're not the only person with that question. You may think you're the only person with that question, but I'll bet you large amounts of money that other people, probably everybody else in this room, has probably had that same question at some point in time, and we'll find the answers together. So, I don't know if the girls are done talking over there or not, but I know that we typically try to end things a little after 7:30, and it's
7:30.
yep 7:35.
Okay.
He's texting real quick to see if we're done. Do what?
How did God come to be like? How did he get there?
He always was.
What's that thing?
The thing that actually was funny is I was talking. It's cool that you said that, because I was talking to somebody else that had almost that same identical question. Everything we see and know is governed by time. If you think about whether it's the earth or the universe or whatever, here it's inside of time. It had a definite beginning and a definite end. But once you get outside of time, there is no beginning, there is no end. The only thing that's outside of time is God. So there was no beginning for him, because he always was, just like he always will be. And now that we're part with him, when you get born again, now we go on with him. So yes, you exist here, but you also exist here. And that, if you sit and think about it, one of two things happens. You either get really excited or it blows your mind.
It both.
Or both happens. But when you realize that the person who is outside of all that, who is over that, wanted you,
It's crazy.
I go around each person, put my finger in your face. The person who created time, who created the universe, who created everything, down to the last component of an atom, wants you. Wants you. Wants you to be part of them, part of their family. That's the amazing thing. That's the amazing thing. They're closing? Cool. All right. Well.
You got some, Justin?
I don't know.
I don't know. That question has been on my mind for like years.
And like I said, I bet everybody else has thought about that.
Confusing me. Yeah, I just don't know very understand.
That's
The,
basic.
the easiest way to separate it, like I said, is by time or no time. Time, if you think about time like a beach ball, and everything that you could fit inside that beach ball is governed by that beach ball. But now you're outside of that beach ball. So that beach ball doesn't have any effect on you. You can deflate that beach ball, you can move that beach ball, you can throw that beach ball, you're in complete control of that. So everything that's ever been made is inside of time, but God's out here, outside of time. So he can, that's why he knows the end from the beginning. Because if you think about it this way too, if you think about it this way too, it's kind of cool. Look at a clock face. I know everybody's got digital stuff, but think about a clock face. You got 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
That's the Roman numerals.
But same thing, but you're looking at that clock face. 12 cannot touch 6. They're on opposite sides, aren't they?
Yeah.
The only way that you can touch 12 and 6 at the same time is if you're in the middle and you've got one hand on 12 and one hand on 6. So you look at God and you have the beginning of time up there at 1 o'clock, and where we are now, maybe we're at 9:30, 10 o'clock. One can't touch 10, but God in the middle from 1 can see 10 and go, this is what I have planned for you to do. Because I've seen 10 o'clock, I've seen 11 o'clock, I've seen 12 o'clock, because I'm here and I can touch both things. You can't see around the curve. If you're over here at 1, you can't see around the curve over here to 10 o'clock. But I can, because I'm in the middle. And I can be at your past and I can be at your future at the same time. It's awesome when you think about it. That's why he said, I know the plans I have for you. Because literally, you're over here at 1 o'clock, I've seen your 10 o'clock. I've seen your 10 o'clock, and it's good. It's really cool. You're gonna wanna hang out with me through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, because I've seen your 10 o'clock, and 10 o'clock is pretty awesome.